Russia says the Syrian regime has confirmed it's ready to establish a cessation of hostilities. This comes ahead of an agreement which is due to begin in Syria on Saturday. Let's cross to Jack Parrock in Moscow for more on this. So, Jack, Bashar al-Assad has told Vladimir Putin that his government was ready during a telephone conversation. What more do we know?
So we don't know too much about this phone call between the Russian President Vladimir Putin and the Syrian President Bashar al-Assad, who the Russian regime supports. But what we do know is that they both agreed to try and promote and push this ceasefire. But on the other hand, they also agreed that they would continue fighting terrorist targets deemed to be terrorists by the United Nations, like the Islamic State, Daesh, and the Al-Nusra Front as well, who are not included in this agreement that was signed just under 2 days ago between the US and Russia, which says basically that though the US and Russia have agreed to try to enforce a ceasefire with the factions that they support on opposing sides in Syria.
Jack, we know the countries have very close ties, but just how much can the Russian president influence Bashar al-Assad in terms of sticking by this agreement?
I think the reality is that Bashar al-Assad is now almost entirely reliant on Russian support. His military campaign was kind of wavering until the Russians stepped in Syria. So the reality is that he's got a lot, that Vladimir Putin has a lot of influence within the government in Damascus that's trying to claim its legitimacy and push to remain in power. So it does look like if the Russian president really wants Bashar al-Assad to keep this ceasefire agreement, then it could hold. The Americans, for their part, have been talking about a plan B for if this ceasefire doesn't work. But the Russians have said that there is no plan B and that they intend to push this ceasefire, which is set to come into force on Saturday, if all sides agree to it and sign up to it by noon on Friday. But we'll have to wait and see what happens in the meantime. And then when it does come into force, whether it can really have the effect that the international community and the Russian and US partners want to really cease the hostilities in Syria.
All right, we'll wait and see. Jack Parrock live for us in Moscow. Thank you.